Last episode, we covered spot mechanics, T+2 settlement, value dates, how trades flow from agreement to actual currency exchange. Today, we're talking about execution, how trades actually get done, the methods available, and how to choose the right one for what you're trying to achieve. When I started in FX, execution was simple. You picked up the phone, you called a dealer, you asked for a price, they quoted you a rate, you dealt or you passed. That was it. Today, execution is far more complex. Voice trading still exists. But now, you also have single dealer platforms, multi-dealer platforms, electronic communication networks, algorithmic execution, and high-frequency trading firms all operating simultaneously. The proliferation of options creates opportunity. Competitive pressure has compressed spreads dramatically. But it also creates confusion. Which venue do you use? When? For what type of order? We're going to walk through each execution method, what it is, how it works, when to use it, and the trade-offs involved. Let's start with voice trading. Because despite all the electronic evolution, voice remains important for specific situations. Voice trading means calling a dealer directly, speaking to a person, negotiating a price, agreeing to trade over the phone. In the 1980s and 90s, this was the only option. You maintained relationships with 3, 4, maybe 5 banks. You knew the dealers personally. When you needed to execute, you called your contacts. The advantages were relationship-based. Your dealer knew you, knew your business, knew your typical trade patterns. That knowledge created trust. And trust meant better pricing, especially during stressed markets when dealers pulled back from clients they didn't know well. I remember the 2008 crisis. Electronic platforms showed quotes, but if you tried to deal, many would reject. The only way to actually execute was calling dealers you had long-standing relationships with. Voice worked when electronic didn't. Voice trading still makes sense for specific situations. Very large trades, over 50 million, sometimes over 100 million. At that size, dealers want to discuss. They want to understand your timing, whether you're willing to show patience, whether there's flexibility on execution. Complex trades, structured products, exotic currency pairs, anything that doesn't fit standardized electronic formats, these require negotiation, customization. That happens through conversation, not clicking buttons. Market stress periods. When volatility spikes, electronic quotes widen dramatically or disappear entirely. Voice relationships become the only reliable execution channel. And advisory situations. When you want cancel, not just execution. A corporate treasurer unsure how to structure a hedge program benefits from discussion with experienced dealers. That's voice, not electronic. The disadvantages are transparency and competition. When you call one dealer, you get in their price. You don't know if it's competitive. You could call multiple dealers sequentially, but that takes time, and it tips your hand that you're shopping around, which might actually worsen pricing. Now let's talk about single dealer platforms. Single dealer platforms are electronic systems provided by individual banks. Citi Velocity, JP Morgan Markets, HSBC FX Direct. Each major bank has its own proprietary platform. You log into their system, you see streaming prices for major currency pairs, you can click to deal instantly, or you can submit a request for quote for larger sizes or less liquid pairs. The advantage is relationship pricing. The bank knows you're a client. They see your order flow over time. If you're generating profitable business for them, they'll offer you tight spreads. Sometimes tighter than you'd get on competitive platforms because they want to keep your business. Integration with other banking services creates operational efficiencies. Your FX platform links to your cash management system, your trade finance facilities, your credit lines. Everything runs through one relationship. Product coverage is usually comprehensive. Single dealer platforms support vanilla spot and forwards, but also options, swaps, exotics, things you might not find on multi-dealer venues. The disadvantage is lack of competition. On that specific trade, you're seeing one bank's price. It might be good, it might be generous, but you don't know without comparison. For routine small trades, single dealer platforms work fine. For larger trades, you probably want competitive pricing. Multi-dealer platforms solve the competition problem. Multi-dealer platforms aggregate liquidity from multiple banks simultaneously. Bloomberg FX Go, Refinitiv FX All, 360T. These systems connect to 10, 15, sometimes 20 banks at once. You submit a request for quote. The platform distributes your inquiry to all connected dealers. They compete for your business. You see multiple quotes simultaneously. You select the best one. Transaction happens electronically. The advantages are substantial. Price competition typically improves execution by 2 to 4 pips compared to single dealer trades. That adds up quickly on volume. Transparency allows you to see the range of quotes. If pricing is tight across dealers or if there's significant dispersion. That's information you can use. Operational efficiency is high. One connection gives you access to multiple dealers, standardized workflows, automated confirmations, integration with your systems. Best execution documentation is built in. You can demonstrate to auditors that you sought competitive quotes, you selected the best available price, you have full audit trails. That matters for governance and compliance. The disadvantages are subtle but real. Very large trades can move markets if multiple dealers see the same request and start hedging preemptively. Your €100 million order goes to 8 banks. Each bank might start positioning. Suddenly the market moves before you even execute. Product standardization limits what's available electronically. Vanilla spot, forwards, standard swaps. Complex structures still require voice. Last look, provisions create execution uncertainty. That's where a dealer can reject your acceptance within milliseconds. They quoted you a price. You accepted. But they see market movement and pull the quote before settling the trade. That's frustrating and creates information leakage. Electronic communication networks, ECNs, work differently from dealer platforms. ECNs are anonymous matching systems. They don't involve dealers quoting prices. Instead, they aggregate orders from multiple participants. Market makers post quotes. Liquidity takers hit those quotes. Everyone's anonymous. EBS and Reuters Matching are the two primary interbank ECNs. These are where banks trade with each other. Very tight spreads. But you need to be a bank or a large institution with direct ECN access. Some retail ECN-style platforms exist, but they're different animals. True institutional ECNs provide transparent pre-trade visibility. You see the order book, you see depth. You see where liquidity sits. The advantage is often the absolute tightest spreads available, because you're accessing the same prices banks trade at with each other. The disadvantage is execution isn't guaranteed. You see a quote, you try to hit it, but someone else might get there first. It's first come, first served, no relationship considerations. For most corporate users, ECN access isn't practical. You need sophisticated technology, direct connections, real-time systems. It's infrastructure that makes sense for banks and hedge funds, less so for typical corporate treasury. Now we get to algo execution, algorithms. This is where things get interesting. An algorithm is a computer program that executes your order according to specified logic. You give the algorithm parameters, total size, time horizon, urgency. The algorithm then breaks your order into smaller pieces and executes them tactically. Let's say you need to sell €50 million. You don't want to do that all at once, too much market impact. You'd move the price against yourself. Instead, you use an algorithm. Tell it to sell €50 million over the next 4 hours. The algorithm slices that into smaller orders, maybe 500,000 here, $1 million there. It varies the size, varies the timing, monitors market conditions, adjusts its behavior. The result is execution spread across time with minimal market impact. You get better average pricing than you would dumping the whole order at once. Common algorithm types include TWAP, time-weighted average price. The algo executes steadily throughout your time window. If you say 4 hours, it spreads execution evenly across those 4 hours. VWAP, volume-weighted average price. The algo concentrates execution during periods of higher market activity. If more volume happens during the London-New York overlap, the algo executes more then. Adaptive algorithms adjust based on market conditions. If spreads widen, they slow down. If spreads tighten, they accelerate. They're dynamic rather than mechanical. Implementation shortfall algorithms focus on minimizing the difference between your decision price and your execution price. They're more aggressive initially to capture your decision level, then slow down if the market moves favorably. The advantages of algo execution are significant for large orders. You minimize market impact, you avoid showing your full hand to the market. You can execute patient programs over hours or even days. The disadvantages are complexity and information leakage risks. Algorithms work best in liquid markets where there's continuous pricing. In illiquid pairs, there isn't enough flow for algorithms to operate effectively. And predictable algorithms can be detected. If dealers notice systematic patterns, they can trade ahead of you. Good algorithms incorporate randomization to prevent that, but it's an arms race. High-frequency trading firms are the newest players in FX execution. HFT firms use ultra-fast computers and sophisticated algorithms to trade thousands of times per day. They're making markets electronically. They profit from capturing bid-offer spreads repeatedly, thousands of times, making tiny amounts on each trade that add up to meaningful revenue. From your perspective as an institutional trader or corporate treasurer, HFT firms show up as additional liquidity on electronic platforms. They're often providing the tightest quotes you see. Not always, but often. During normal market conditions, HFT participation improves pricing. Competition from HFT firms forces traditional dealers to tighten their spreads. Depth increases. Execution quality improves. During stress markets, HFT firms typically withdraw. Their algorithms detect elevated risk, they pull quotes. Liquidity evaporates quickly. That's when voice relationships with traditional dealers matter again. HFT accounts for maybe 15 to 20% of spot FX volume in major pairs, concentrated during liquid hours, less active during quiet Asian session, not really present in exotic pairs. So how do you choose which execution method to use? Let me give you a framework. For small standard trades, under 5 million in major pairs during liquid hours, use multi-dealer platforms or single-dealer platforms. Electronic execution gives you competitive pricing with minimal effort. The size isn't large enough to warrant the complexity of voice or algorithms. For medium trades, 5 to 20 million, in major pairs, consider multi-dealer platforms with competitive RFQ. You're getting meaningful price competition without the operational overhead of calling multiple dealers. For large trades, above 20 or 30 million, think about using algorithms if you have time flexibility. Break the order up, execute over hours, minimize market impact. If you don't have time flexibility, voice trading with trusted dealers becomes important. For very large trades, above 50 or 100 million, voice is usually necessary. Dealers want discussion, you want to negotiate. Size matters enough that personal relationships and timing flexibility determine execution quality. For exotic currencies or complex structures, voice is still your only real option. Electronic platforms don't support that complexity. You need negotiation and customization. Similarly, if one is located outside of the major trading centers and regular volumes are not large, for stressed market conditions, maintain voice relationships. When electronic quotes widen or disappear, voice trading with dealers who know you becomes essential. Let me give you a real example from when I was running treasury operations in the Middle East. We had a recurring need to convert euro receivables to dollars. The size varied. Sometimes 5 million, sometimes 10 million. Timing was predictable. End of each month. For the small trades, we used a single dealer platform with our relationship bank. Fast, simple, spreads were reasonable given the relationship. For the larger trades, we started using a multi-dealer platform, sent RFQs to 4 banks, always got competitive pricing, typically saved 2 to 3 pips compared to single dealer pricing. But 1 month, we had an unusually large conversion, 50 million euro. That was probably 8 times our normal size. I didn't use the multi-dealer platform. I picked up the phone, called our primary relationship bank directly, explained we had a large one-off transaction, asked if they wanted to, quote, They gave me a price that was tighter than I would have expected from an RFQ. Why? Because I called them directly, gave them an exclusive shot at the business, and they valued the relationship enough to price aggressively. That's using execution methods strategically. Small routine trades, electronic, large important trades, voice with relationship context. One more critical point about execution: transaction cost analysis, TCA. Professional execution requires measuring quality. You need to know if you're achieving good pricing relative to market benchmarks. That's what TCA provides. Simple TCA compares your execution price to the mid-market rate at the time of trade. If mid was 1.0850 and you bought at 1.0852, you paid 2 pips. Is that good? Depends on market conditions and your trade size. More sophisticated TCA compares to multiple benchmarks. Arrival price, that's the mid-market when you decided to trade. Volume weighted average price during your execution window. Pre-trade spreads to understand if your spread was typical or wide. Post-trade analysis, showing all executable quotes you could have hit, not just the one you did hit, reveals if you selected the best available price or left money on the table. TCA over time reveals patterns. Maybe one dealer consistently offers poor pricing, or one platform generates better execution than others, or certain times of day produce tighter spreads for your typical trade type. That intelligence drives process improvement. You shift more business to better venues. You avoid poor execution channels. You optimize timing. Small improvements compound over thousands of trades into meaningful cost savings. That's execution in modern FX markets. Voice trading for large sizes, complex structures, and stress conditions. Single dealer platforms for relationship-based routine trading. Multi-dealer platforms for competitive pricing on standard trades. Algorithms for working large orders with time flexibility. And HFT providing liquidity during normal conditions. Understanding these options and selecting appropriately based on trade characteristics determines execution quality, which directly affects your costs and your hedging effectiveness. Next episode, we'll dig into transaction costs more deeply. Spreads, market impact, timing costs, opportunity costs, how to measure them, how to minimize them, and how to build realistic expectations about achievable execution quality. Because knowing how to execute is only valuable if you understand what execution actually costs. I'm David Axtell. Thanks for joining me on the trading floor. If you're finding this series useful, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We release episodes weekly. And if you want deeper coverage of execution strategies and FX market mechanics, check out FX Cash Products, the book Luigi Rondinini and I wrote, available through Rondinini Publishing. See you in episode 7.